Before we begin assembly of our clock, we are going to check the condition of our bellow. The bellow should be measured. I'm going to use a thermal camera and I am measuring this nice flat surface, gives us 70.2 degrees. I'm going to move it over to the tape. I have tape installed over the metal. It's in contact with metal. It's going to give me a temperature because it's a flat surface and it is 70.3 degrees, 70.7. It's kind of bouncing around a little bit. Now you could use something like this and just take a temperature nearby. Here we're at 69.6, so they're not completely accurate. Okay, so the bellow, this is your motor for your clock. The bellow is filled with ethyl chloride. Ethyl chloride is installed at freezing temperatures, and then the bellow is sealed with solder. Ethyl chloride boils at 54 degrees Fahrenheit, becomes a gas. Now that gas is going to make the bellow expand. So we're measuring the distance from the top of the bellow to the canister, right where this blue tape is stretched across. We're going to measure in the middle because this bellow is shaped like a cone. So we want to get measurements from the center. Now, if this is a good bellow, we should be able to measure at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, anywhere from 22 to 28 millimeters from the top of the bellow to the blue tape. If there is a small leak, we would expect that the bellow begins to shrink at this temperature. The bellow would be questionable. Now, those dimensions are between 28 and 32 millimeters, so quite a bit lower. That tells us that we're losing some of our gas. If we measure anything over 32, especially up to 40 millimeters, we've completely lost the gas. The bellow needs to be sent to somebody who can install some new ethyl chloride. Keep in mind, those installers have about a 1 in 4 chance of not having the gas install take. So you have a 75% chance it's going to work, and you have a 25% chance it's not. Okay, so we're at temperature. We're going to use a caliper, and I'm going to measure from the top, get my hand out of the way, from the top of the highest part of the bellow, right in the middle, to the blue tape. Just wait until I touch it. Right there. Okay. 23.2 millimeters. That's perfect. 22 is a probably perfect bellow, and as long as we're up to 28 millimeters, it's still considered a very good bellow. 28 to 32 millimeters will give you service for many years. This is pretty incredible considering this is, let's double check, I forgot when this was made. I see 86. So here we go. Maybe you can see it, 1986. So the bellow is 37 years old. Not bad. We can probably get, I have bellows that were made in 1942 that are still working. So we can probably still get another 20, maybe 30 years out of this bellow, who knows? But that is how you check to see if you have a good bellow. If you're buying a clock on eBay, maybe you can ask the seller to take the bellow off of the clock and, verify with a caliper or some method that the bellow is in good working condition, because what sellers can do is pump the back spring on the clock, wind it up. That will last for about a year to 14 months. And then they will reinstall the bellow on the clock. You won't know for a year. Your 2-week guarantee or 1-month guarantee, whatever they give you, it's out the window. So this is the best way to verify you have a good bellow. These will cost you around $150 today, up to, I've seen $450 to refill your bellows. So it's a good savings. Make sure you get some photographs or some video is better, of your bellow being tested before you put $500, $750, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 down on a Atmos clock. All right, I'm going to lay this chain as naturally as possible inside of this pulley. Okay, that can get manipulated a little bit more later. Okay, all that's left now is we're going to install these 6 screws, snug them up, and then the screws on the bottom holding the front frame in place were also loosened. In fact, I think I loosened the rear frame also, and we're gonna snug those up as well. Okay, the first thing you're going to do is attach the spring from the barrel arbor to this pin. And now the chain should be on the opposite side. And now we can keep everything nice and straight. And I'm going to route this chain through the back of the clock and pull it through this way. And it's gonna take a little bit of manipulation. The most important thing is to make sure that the chain links, as they're coming off of the very first pin on the arbor, stay completely straight. They go through the pulley and they're gonna come out the other side the same way, nice and straight. I was very lucky. This chain was pretty long. The last clock I overhauled, the chain was much shorter. So look at the location of the spring and look at the location of the chain. Okay. Notice how the links in the chain are perfectly straight as they go through the pulley. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm gonna pull as much of this chain out as possible. I'm gonna hold the arbor with my finger. I'm going to tilt the clock down and try to install the spring for the bellow and the back plate and reinsert the pin at the 8th link location. I have someone to help me with that, so it's going to make life a little bit easier. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, let me find glasses for this. Okay, now, wait, let me get my hand out of your way. There we go. I'll just count the 8th link. 8. Okay, hold the pin so that it's going to go in the right direction. And let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready. I don't want to
let it down.
Off.
It's not going to fall off.
Do I let go?
Did it fall off?
No.
Okay, I'm coming in. There you go. Nicely done. We're going to watch this black dot on the arbor. What I'm going to do is hold the intermediate wheel and I'm going to pump the spring from the bellow, and we want to see at least 5 up to 7 revolutions. That tells us we have a strong spring. There's 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't quite make it to 4. So we have a weak spring, and this may be one of the reasons why this clock stopped running. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep up with the build and just see how things go. But I can tell you that the tension on this spring is not nearly what it is with the other clocks that I have overhauled. I am gonna go ahead and install the movement. The roller I moved it over to the right side. And what I'm gonna do when I put the movement in is make sure that it's on the right side also. I'm gonna go ahead and wind the clock. Just until that stops. And unlock the balance. And let it run. You have assembled your movement onto your clock, and you're pretty excited to go ahead and start installing the dial, the hands, put the case back together. But what you need to do is observe everything assembled like this for a couple of days. Make sure everything's working okay. So we're looking at the impulse roller. Look how the fork is grabbing it and it's going to throw it to the right. Perfect. Look how fast the roller is moving. It's going all the way to the back of the clock, almost extending to the other side. We're gonna measure this. I believe right now we're running at about 540 degree amplitude. Now notice the distance between the pins to the right of the fork. Just a little bit more than a millimeter. Here we go. The fork's gonna take that roller again and it's gonna throw it. And again, we have just maybe a millimeter between the side of the fork and the pin. Okay, now notice how it's throwing that roller about the same distance on the right side that it threw it to the left side. When your movement is in balance, that's what happens. Now we're gonna verify imbalance by doing another thing too, and we're gonna measure amplitude. Okay, so the way we're gonna measure amplitude is we're gonna count these motifs. There is 12 of them. Each of them is going to represent 30 degrees, okay? So right there, about the middle of this motif, we're gonna begin. So right there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, almost 15. Now, it stopped right around here, didn't it? So we're gonna look at this side of the motif. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, again, almost 15. So it's swinging exactly to the left that it is to the right. It's in beat. If we hit 15 motifs, it's 450 degree amplitude. This is what you're looking for. Two things as a watchmaker. Is amplitude in beat. That gives you accurate timekeeping. So we have both here. We have high amplitude, 540 degrees is the highest amplitude an Atmos clock will run. Keep in mind, this clock was made in 73. It's 2023. It's running like a brand new clock. It's running just as good as my clocks to the left. And we're in beat, we have great amplitude. You cannot ask for more. We've already verified the motor is a good motor. This clock will probably get at least another, well, we've used synthetic oil, not in any of these parts except for our gears here, these two gears between the intermediate wheel and the barrel. These were the only places we used oil here. We used some oil inside of the barrel. Everything else is dry. So as long as we keep everything covered, this clock will run for at least another 20 years, 30 years before needing service again. I'm very happy with the performance. This is all of the oxidation that was under the lacquer on the bellow case and this portion of the bellow. It took a long time to take this off, and what I did was first I removed the bellow from its case. I just put a piece of ice on top of the bellow, it went down. And then I was able to turn this to unlock it and remove the bellow. A lot of hours went into cleaning this and putting a new coat of lacquer on it to protect the gold finish. It turned out really nice compared to how it used to look. And then I got a new mainspring. Notice how tight this mainspring is compared to the one that came out. So tomorrow I'm going to take the old mainspring out of the old barrel, put this one in, and see if I can't get more than, I barely got 4 rotations out of the arbor when I wound it with the bellow spring. So we should see 5 to 7. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all this stuff tonight. Tomorrow, take the clock apart again, put the new spring in the barrel, and of course clean this and lubricate it, and see if we can do better than less than 4 rotations of the arbor. We are going to put the motor back together. I'm going to take the Swiss name and turn it down like this. So this is our top. I have already fitted the this plate on the clock to ensure that this will be the top. So I put a T on it, and this will be going in like this, and then it will be turning like this, so that part is on top. Okay, so let me get the bellow out of the refrigerator. Okay, the bellow is compressed. I think I'm going to put this in with the date in the upwards direction. The guard spring goes in place, and then we can take this and push everything down and rotate it. Just like that. Okay, now that's the bottom. The date is upward in the correct position. Let me make sure that's perfectly straight. And then we can take the rear decorative plate and press that back into place. So in fact, you know what? This has a little tiny defect on that. Let's put that on the bottom. Okay, and there you have it. Looks great. Just for comparison, this is the main spring that was installed in the clock. This is a main spring that I ordered off of eBay. It's a used spring, but as you can tell, it's in very good condition. It's nice and tight. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this spring, lubricate it with Mobius 9020, and reinstall it in the clock and see if we can gain rotations on the arbor between 5 and 7 instead of, I think last time we were almost 4. So that brings us out of specs. We want to be in specs. The new spring has been installed in the barrel. We made sure that this is within specs, and it was 47 millimeters. So now we're going to begin to compress the bellow spring until it can't be compressed anymore. And we're going to count the revolutions on the arbor. There's 1, 2, 3. Remember the old spring, this is where it collapsed, was just right around 4. So we're ready at 4. 5. 6. And it stopped. It looks like about 6.5. So what's happening now is the strength of the spring in this barrel is equal to the strength of the spring here. So they've reached equilibrium. We're within specs. Before I begin final assembly of the clock, I just want to explain a little bit in my interpretation how this clock works. So we have our bellow. The bellow is filled with alpha chloride gas. The gas increases its diameter when the temperature rises. We have a return spring in this drum that forces the bellow to contract and controls the expansion. Okay, so that way it will never get, if you were to take this spring out, the bellow would be sticking out of the drum about this far. So we have to have something that controls the bellow and pushes it back. Okay, it's always going to be pushing on this plate a dozen, maybe 20 times a day, just little tiny pushes. Okay, this is your winding spring. Your end cap is what's going to get pushed on by your bellow. Okay, that's going to transfer this lateral force into a rotational force. So now we can follow our chain, and then there's also a winding spring back here that's always putting tension, so that when the clicks on this ratchet end up going in one direction, these will keep constant tension on them so they will not unwind. Okay, so that's our winding chain. We have our winding drum, and of course the ratchet, and then the drum spring is what's behind the drum. All of that's going to transfer, let's see if I can find it, transfers energy from these wheels all the way down here, right here, to your movement. Okay, so now we're sending energy through the gear train. We're transferring rotational motion from the mainspring to the escape wheel. Okay, now we're also going to end up transferring energy to the pallet fork. Okay, this accelerates the plenum through the impulse roller. So we're going to accelerate this pendulum or the balance by throwing the impulse roller back and forth. Okay, while that's happening, the escapement is going to control that motion. Okay, and that motion that's being controlled that we have in this balance spring, we have a balance spring that will rotate hopefully over 360 degrees every time it rotates. So when our fork throws the impulse roller, let's say to the right, that spring inside of this post is putting force, they're putting force on that spring. That spring wants to rotate back and it wants to be level again. So that's why it only goes so far, comes back, and we start the whole process again. And during that whole process, we are somehow, through all of these gears, converting this energy to our hour wheel and our minute hand into something that we understand, a clock. So I hope this helps you appreciate mechanical movements. And I know we all have electric watches, we all have phones, but this is a technology that I think even today it's just absolutely beautiful. I'm going to begin by putting the motor back on the clock. We have the word Swiss written on the bottom of this drum. We want to keep that on the bottom and go ahead and install the drum. We're going to catch the drum with these acorn nuts and tighten them with that 8mm wrench. The dial pan is going to go on next. There are 4 screws that are going to secure the pan to the clock. Next, we are going to install the dial on top of the dial pan. And there are 4 very small screws here, here, and here to secure it to the pan. This is how I'm going to poise my hands. So I have a drill bit set on my movement holder. It's giving me a pretty level surface. The drill bit is just a little bit smaller than the hole inside of the hour hand. And I'm just going to rotate it a little bit to make sure it's balanced. It doesn't seem to want to fall in one direction more than the other. Okay, I can only go so far, but these are the positions I'm concerned about. This is where we're going to be fighting gravity. And remember how I told you they have already been poised from the factory? You can see they have drilled out some parts of the brass to get everything nice and balanced. Let's try the minute hand. All right, here we have the minute hand. I think the minute hand looks pretty good. Okay, and you also want to make sure that your hands are nice and straight too. Looks good. It's almost noon and I still have the case to clean and assemble, so I'm going to give myself until about 3 o'clock. You know what, I'm going to do it till 4 o'clock because I can see I'm looking right over the top of the clock, and I'm going to get this hour hand centered right over that number 4 indicator, and I'm just going to press straight down. I'm off just a hair. Let me pull it back up. There we go. Right there. I'm holding the wheel so I don't turn the wheel. You can't turn. Looks like I need to go down quite a bit more. There we go. Okay, right on the money. Now, once the hour hand is in place, I could go down a little bit more, but I think I'm going to leave it right where it's at. Once the hour hand is in place, you can't rotate the hour hand. You have to make sure you hit that indicator perfect. The minute hand, we can put, I'm going to aim for 12 o'clock and just press straight down. We can fudge the minute hand a little bit. There we go. That's it. So the minute hand can be moved, the hour hand can never be moved. If you do move the minute hand, make sure that you lock the clock, and then you can move the hour hand only in one direction. I never see a reason to do that unless I'm making really small adjustments. So this is how we're gonna leave it. And there we have it. Here is the completed clock. It was a little crispy when I got it. It didn't work. It ran for just a couple of minutes and then it stopped. I'm going to go ahead and begin to set the pendulum in motion. You want to lock the clock anytime you move it. I wait for the balance to make its complete rotation to the right, and just about when it's ready to stop is when I slowly engage the lock, because as I unlock it, it's going to gently drag the balance to the left, like that. Okay, and now it's in the unlocked position. What I'm going to do now, I'm not going to look at this clock for at least a day. I'm going to come back tomorrow and begin the regulation process. So I will start to time the clock in maybe a 1 day interval and see how fast or how slow it's going. I'll make small adjustments. I'll wait a couple of days and then I'll make another small adjustment. Within a couple of weeks, you can usually get these clocks to regulate pretty close to just a few seconds a month. So it looks beautiful. It's been about 24 hours since we set the clock up. Look for a location for your clock to live. Where are you going to store it full time? Where can you enjoy it? This is a good location for us. We don't use these drawers very often, so I don't have to worry about them getting open and closed and making the balance swing around. If you have kids, you may want to put it up a little bit higher. Okay, so we've been up and running for about a day. When you first start your clock after making adjustments to it, the amplitude is going to be a little bit low. This one was about 220 degrees. Now that it's been sitting for a day, it's back up to 450 degrees. It will probably increase a little bit, get closer to 500. All of my clocks after a month tend to settle in at right around 500 degrees or more. Now what you're going to do is you want to regulate the clock, set its time. You want to make sure that the balance is perfectly level or plumb. These clocks come with a little level bubble. That gets you close. You want to level your clock like this. We're looking down on top of the clock, and this is your balance tube, and then it has a circular disc installed just before it hits the frame. You want to make sure that the space around the disc is even all the way around the frame. And the way that we're going to ensure that it's close is by, here's your built-in level. We're going to be adjusting two screws, okay? We can call them legs. We have 3 legs, one leg here, and then there's one in the back. The one in the back is fixed, but you can adjust these 2. When you turn them clockwise, you're going to raise this corner, and when you turn them counterclockwise, you're going to lower the corner. And by just making your changes with the elevation of these 2 screws, you're going to get it really close here. As you can see, we're perfectly plumb, and this bubble level still shows we're off a little bit. So that gets you close. Sometimes these are dried up, and you just have to get it close by looking down the clock. And then once everything settles, just come back and make little tiny movements with these 2 screws. Now that you have your clock leveled, it's time to regulate. The largest wheel in the train takes 28.5 days to make one full rotation. You don't know if you're going to have a problem with the clock until that 28.5 day period is over, so usually a month. During that month period, what I do is I start timing in 15-minute increments to see how close I am to being in time with a digital watch or a phone, and make small adjustments on the lever on the top. Every little increment on the top lever is going to be 10 seconds per day, and you want to make small adjustments. That's the only adjustment that I make that I don't lock the clock for. Any other adjustment, I always lock the clock. But because there's such small adjustments, I don't lock it. And then you're going to have to wait 2 days before you can begin regulating. It's a process, but you can pretty much get these clocks to be within a few seconds a month. You just take your time and get everything set up. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. It's I think we ended up being almost an hour between the disassembly and the assembly. It's kind of like Shade Tree Mechanic, right? They'll take a car apart between commercials and put it back together by the next commercial. There's a lot of work involved with stripping these clocks, cleaning them, putting them back together, regulating them. The overhaul process takes some time. So if you're not comfortable doing this, hire someone to do it. Pay them to to overhaul your clock. Once you overhaul the clock, it's good for another 20, 25 years probably, since we're using synthetic oil today. If you want me to overhaul your clock, send me a note. This is my email address. Send me an email and we'll figure something out. So, hey, best of luck to you.